Welcome to the annual Data Summit. Thank you. I want to just start, without further ado, with the European Commission Vice President for Digital Single Market, Andrus Ansip, to come and join me on the stage. As you all know, he was a former Estonian, or Estonian, I guess, Prime Minister, and we're very glad to have him. I will come around, sorry. Oh, that's the wrong way. It's good to have you. Thanks for joining us. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It's my pleasure to be here.
I want to start, I think, with everyone's mind is obviously what happened in Paris last Friday. And we've already seen, a debate around what this might mean for the way we police our free societies, for intelligence cooperation. And I wonder if you and your colleagues at the Commission have given any thought to the possible implications for digital policy.
Of course, in those days, we all are in our thoughts with the French people. We will discuss about those terrible attacks on our college meeting tomorrow. But for me, it is really clear that we have to go on with the PNR discussions, passenger name records discussions. This is something which will be really needed for us to make Europe much more safe place than it is today. We have to hurry up with those negotiations. Then we have to strengthen firearm rules. Because I think those rules in some countries, they are too soft rules. We have to pay more attention on terrorist materials on different websites in the internet. But we will discuss about those issues tomorrow. It's too early to say what kind of decisions there will be made on the level of the European Commission tomorrow.
I'm curious, maybe personally, or where did you fall, let's say, on the privacy versus security balance last week, and has what has happened kind of brought on your own rethinking of where that balance should be?
All our rules have to protect our people. They have to protect our freedoms, fundamental rights, and there has to be a good balance between security aspects and those fundamental rights. We have to take time. I know that everybody is asking for actions today. But as we remember, in the year 2004, there were terrorist attacks taking place in Madrid, then 2005 in London, 2006 we got Data Retention Directive. Mm-hmm. And as we know now, it's null and void.
Right.
Because we didn't follow basic freedoms we have in the European Union with this Data Retention Directive.
So it doesn't sound like you think there'll be that much of an impact on the digital single market as well as the Data Protection Directive as it moves forward right now?
We have to create a digital single market in the European Union anyway, and I don't think there is some kind of direct connection between the digital single market and those terrorist attacks. We were able to create single market in the European Union in physical meaning, but sorry to say, digital single market does not exist in the European Union. We have 28 relatively small markets, and it means for small, medium-sized companies, it's practically impossible to understand how those 28 rules are protecting consumers somewhere, and what kind of obligations businesses are getting from those different regulations. And cost of non-Europe is huge, according to analyses prepared by the European Parliament. This cost is 415 billion euros per year. And the question is not only in money, it's also about fundamental rights. Why we have to accept discrimination on basis of your nationality or where your credit card is issued on 21st century in the European Union?
This is the last question I wanted to pose, and maybe people will have some from the audience, but is Edward Snowden in some ways to blame for what happened?
As I said already, our rules are mentioned to protect our people and their rights, their freedoms. And rule of law is one of those basic principles we have here in Europe, and that everybody has to follow those principles. It doesn't matter, are we talking about individuals or institutions? Rule of law is important for everybody.
Well, as you know, the reason I asked the question because he had revealed a lot about the way that the U.S. obviously tries to track by digital means terror suspects, and the former Deputy CIA Director Michael Morrell said that after this came out, the communications just dried up, and people became much more innovative in how they did communicate.
I don't think we have to say today that it was fault of our police, fault of our intelligence services, what happened in Paris. In democratic society, rule of law is really important principle. And I don't think we would like to live in a society where there are no rules, or there are some institutions or individuals who don't have to follow those common rules.
As long as we're on the topic of transatlantic relations, or very broadly, I wanted to segue to the issue of safe harbor. How would you characterize the discussions so far with the Americans? And what are the chances you think you might have a replacement for safe harbor by the start of next year?
I myself, I'm looking forward optimistically, and it's not just because of well-known sentence, according with optimism is our moral duty. We have to understand for what this safe harbor was needed at first. Today, when we are talking about safe harbor, then majority of people, they know that there are some kind of problems. It was something wrong, and people, they are not thinking so much about importance of safe harbor. We got our first data protection directive in the European Union in the year 1995. And according to this very first data protection directive, it was allowed to transport data to the third country on basis of contracts, so-called contract clause, then inside of corporations, then on basis of consent, this is last resort, and when country was adequate. But about the United States, it was quite complicated for us to say how adequate in meaning of data protection this country is, because they didn't have those federal regulations dealing with data protection issues. And then the European Commission and the US government started to negotiate. And in the year 2000, we got safe harbor. Those were mainly European standards. Companies transferring data of Europeans to the United States promised to follow on voluntary basis. So it was mentioned to protect data of Europeans. But in the year 2013, you know, because of what? We got this understanding that safe harbor is not safe. And already then, we made our 13 proposals to Americans to make safe harbor safe. And we started to negotiate with Americans. So last year in January, President Barack Obama made a really remarkable speech where he stated that all the data, it doesn't matter data of Americans or non-Americans, they have to be treated on equal basis in the United States of America. And I would like to say those negotiations, they were also based on those principles between the European Commission and the United States. According to my understanding, we were pretty close to safe harbor already. And then we got this court ruling. And now we have to continue with those negotiations.
So why are you optimistic?
Because there is sense of urgency on both sides, in the United States of America and here in the European Union. So I got, let's say, 4 messages from this court ruling. At first, we have to go on with our general data protection reform. This is really important to get this data protection regulation here in the European Union, and all the further activities that they have to based on reformed data protection rules. Then we have to work closely together with Americans to find solution. And as I said, there is sense of urgency on both sides. Then I think our national data protection, and not only national, but also regional data protection agencies, they have to cooperate, they have to create or to try to create common positions, because if 28 or 128, I don't know how many data protection agencies, they will start to negotiate with somebody, then this somebody will be maybe even happy, but I think all that 128 will be disappointed. Right. So this cooperation is definitely needed, and we have to provide guidelines to our businesses, and we did this already a week ago.
Right. Let me, I want to open the floor to questions, but let me ask you a couple of yes or no questions. Do you and Günther Oettinger go cross-country skiing together?
I don't think in this part of Germany, Günther is coming from, is really good for cross-country skiing, but conditions for cross-country skiing are really good in Estonia. And yes, now I'm not so well prepared for those cross-country skiing marathons, but as we know, some people, they are collecting coins, some people, they are
Have you ever had a bicycle
collecting
race?
Different golf courses, and some people, they are collecting different cross-country skiing marathons, and I'm one of those people. I took really part in very different marathons, all in the Europe, over the in Australia, in Canada, right. In Japan, and so on.
How would you, it was just a yes or no
people,
question.
They have to have their hobbies. No.
How would you describe your relationship with him?
Those relations are in a good shape, and I would like to say that those relations were in a good shape already 10 years ago in our former positions, and with Günther, it's quite easy to talk with, just to change some couple of words, and we are able to understand what each other's positions. Right. But I know media wants to get some tensions, but sorry.
Everyone always gets along.
I'm not able to provide.
In every workplace, it's a very happy. Just a couple questions right here in the alley. Please identify yourself and ask a brief question.
Stasinopoulos,
It's on. It's fine. Go ahead. It works.
Formerly with the European Commission. My question relates the recent court decision on the transfer of data with the negotiations currently underway with the United States. To what extent the court decision and the need to renegotiate the safe harbor agreement may somehow become possibly a stumbling block in our negotiations, given that in both sides of the Atlantic, the business sectors, they feel that the United States and Europe, they have a great opportunity to demonstrate a global leadership by liberalizing digital products and services, ensuring free flow of data, and preventing even some kind of localization which is underway.
Thank you.
Thank you. One of those main aims, according to our digital single market strategy, is to allow free data flows across the European Union. As we all know, digital business is global business. And according to my understanding, data localization is dead end. But we have to create an environment which allows free and safe data flows also between the European Union and the third countries. Digital data economy will be the future economy. As we all know, it's possible to get already right now, but in the nearest future, all kind of really useful correlations, similar patterns from big data. I said it many, many times already, but I myself, I hope one lovely day, somebody will call me from hospital and will say, Mr. Ansip, please go immediately to the hospital because most likely you will get stroke after 6 hours. I will be not extremely happy about this phone call, but I will be grateful anyway, because to avoid stroke, it's something else than to deal with consequences. And I know my health foundation will be even extremely happy about this phone call because they have to pay less. So I really believe it's possible to find all kind of different useful correlations from big data, similar patterns, and we all will benefit from that. Let's think. 275 million people, they are monitored using Philips monitoring systems during the year. 40 million births under those monitors. In small countries, it's practically impossible to collect data in meaning of big data. And if there is only one case per year, it's impossible to find those similar patterns or useful correlations. And for me, it means I will not get this phone call. So we have to work closely together with Americans to create an environment which allows those data flows, safe data flows between the European Union and the United States of America. And once again, I would like to underline that Americans, they have the same aim. Thank you.
Is there another question? Let me ask you one very quickly. Imagine for us a digital Europe without the UK in the EU. What would that look like?
No, my imagination is not so creative. I'm not able to do that because, according to my understanding, British people, UK government is one of those strongest supporters of digital single market in the European Union, and I think it will be better for the United States, or the United Kingdom to go on together with the other EU member states, and then it will be beneficial also for the other EU member states to go on together with the United Kingdom. So, but it's up to British people to make this decision.
And what would the EU look like if it was like Estonia?
Once again, I have to say that I don't think Estonia is perfect enough to teach other countries using its own example. Yes, some decisions made in Estonia in a quite early stage, they were really good decisions, and I'm talking about single digital identity we gave in Estonia to our citizens. It was really good decision. Second decision, which is really important according to my understanding, it was once only principle. We regulated this on the level of the law in the year 2007, and it gave real boost on usage of those digital identities. Now Estonians, they are signing digitally more than 1 million times during the week, and population in Estonia is just 1.3 million inhabitants. Thanks to digital identity, it's possible to vote electronically in Estonia. Those elections via the internet, they took first time place in the year 2005 during our municipal elections, but at that time only 10,000 Estonians, they really voted via the internet. But now, during the last parliamentary elections, EP elections, let's say we collected even 1/3 from all the votes via the internet. I'm absolutely sure we have to provide modern possibilities to take part in public life also for those people who are just living in the internet. And those people in the country I know best, they are not just youngsters, they are also elderly people. And I think everybody, or all the countries, they can do more to provide those internet-based public services. It's possible to provide much more efficient services to our citizens using those really good e-government tools. We have all the 28 EU member states, but there is a problem, lack of interoperability. Mm-hmm. You cannot cross-use those excellent regulations or solutions we have in different countries in some other countries. And once again, our market is a really fragmented market.
I remember being in Estonia 15 years ago and telling a friend that I had to write my rent check. And he started laughing that I've never even used a check because Estonia went from no checks to internet banking, which was quite remarkable. I want to thank you so much for doing this keynote interview. Fortunately, you will no longer have me, but unfortunately, you are staying. And I want to turn over to Noelle Knox, who is Politico's tech editor, where she will introduce her panel. Thank you very much, Mr. Vice President.
Thank you.
I appreciate it. Thank you.